Welcome to A Ride on the Outside. MMA is full of people on the inside, but what about the ones that watch from beyond? Welcome to the MMA Outsiders with Tom Albano and Zain Bando on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
Welcome to another edition of the MMA Outsiders. It's episode 81. We're back after a week off. It didn't really feel like a week off considering everything that we were doing between Playback and what we were doing outside of the MMA Outsiders. But MMA Outsiders is back. Zain Bando on my left, and I'm Tom Albano, as always, producer Pat behind the scenes. And here we are. We were just coming off, the last time we had an episode, Zain, we were coming off a historical UFC 300 card. And now we are already here for UFC 301 Fight Week and Canelo Fight Week.
Yeah, it was nice for us to get a break. It was also nice for the UFC to get a break. And I'm definitely happy to be back because I know that the remainder of May is going to be busy. We know that what the June madness is going to bring. And it seems like July is already brewing in itself as well. So it's good to be back. We have two major fights to talk about and a very busy sports weekend outside of the combat sports realm as well. So I'm excited to get into it and see everything that we're going to come up with today in regards to analysis and picks and whatnot. But before we get into that, be sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to follow the Empty the Bench Podcast Network across social media at ETB Network. Be sure to follow the MMA Outsiders at MMA Outsiders ETB, and you can follow myself at Endo99 across all forms of social media, and you can follow Tom to my right at Thomas J. Albano. As you know, Thomas J. Albano, or Tom, does excellent work for MMA news and the PFL website as they are in their break before beginning the second half of the PFL regular season. And over on my side of things, I'm busy over at Sporting News, BJPen.com, and so many other places. So you can check my work out there. And I'm also the brand new newly minted host of Bando's Breakdowns, which will air episode 2 later this week. So I have a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun stuff coming on the way. Or just Tom, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, just want to remind everybody to go to youtube.com/ETB Network. We're just passing 730 subscribers. Help us continue our climb. You want to take the MMA Outsiders on the road with you. Listen wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, so much more. Wherever you want to get your audio only fix. And if you are listening on those platforms, we thank you. Just a reminder to come over to our YouTube home. Let's see what else. Oh, don't forget etbpodcast.com because that site has been cranking out blog after blog after blog, banger after banger after banger. So
thanks to me.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks to you. And one last thing here. The MMA Outsiders and the rest of the Empty the Bench Network is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. We've been doing a lot of NBA playoffs following along.
Yeah, we sure have, including myself last night with producer Pat. We reacted to an unbelievable game 4 between the Bucks and the Pacers. The Pacers took that one to take a commanding 3-1 series lead, heading back to Milwaukee, who's very depleted as several of their starters are injured or getting insignificant playing time at this point. So it's been so much fun, and I think Playback has a lot of potential. But NBA at the moment is at its core, so we will continue to bring tons more NBA, tons more classic streams, and whatever the heck else we decide to come up with. This platform is still relatively new and is still growing, so please join our community. It's free. It takes 30 seconds to make an account. You can join our community. You can come up on stage. You can talk to myself. You can talk to Tom. You can talk to any of the other contributors on the network. It's one of the most immersive experiences to where when you go to these summits or when you go on these YouTube live streams and you're posting questions in the chat and the host isn't getting back to you or is ignoring your questions, playback is definitely not like that in so many other senses of the word. So be sure to check it out because I do think it could very well be the future of sports streaming if done in the right way and if given that all of the rights deals goes the way of playback for sure.
Absolutely. All right, let's dive into this week's show. So we got a couple of previews. We have some news that we're going to get through from Conor McGregor now being the part owner of Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, completely taking the whole combat sports world off guard. We have a little bit more information for UFC 304. We have, unfortunately, the tragedy of Francis Ngannou's son passing away. We will, since we missed last week, towards the end of the show, we will talk a little bit about Ryan Garcia pulling off the massive upset over Devin Haney and all the weird circumstances surrounding that fight. But before we do, obviously, we have this weekend to look forward to UFC 301 in Brazil. First time the UFC has had a pay-per-view in Brazil, I want to say since 2019. It was, I think, 237 when Jessica Andrade pile drove Rose Namajunas out cold to win the women's strawweight championship.
I'm gonna correct you there. It was actually UFC 283 when Jamal Hill beat Glover Teixeira.
That was it. That was in Brazil.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I can do a double check on that though.
I will do a double check on that one. Yeah, actually, that was in Brazil. I forgot about that. I thought that was Toronto for some reason. I'm thinking of this year.
It's all right.
So, anyways, I'm going to be very honest. I think this is probably one of the more, and beggars cannot be choosers because obviously we've had a very historic UFC 300 we're just coming off of, but the card for this one is very, I'm sorry to say, but lackluster.
Yeah, it definitely is lackluster, and I guess before we dive right into this into this main event, I just wanted to give you guys some context here. So this is the 15th UFC event of the calendar year. It is obviously the May pay-per-view, and as is alluded to, May is kind of a weird schedule locator. Some years the May pay-per-view is in the United States, other years it's international. This going to get an international type of flavor, and I mentioned this yesterday at the and it's going to be yesterday that this occurred. I mentioned this yesterday in my Combat Sports Today column, which releases every Monday in MMA Knockout. You can go check that out if you haven't. I wrote about 700 or so words just on the sole topic of what fight has the better value between UFC and boxing this weekend, and I made it extremely clear that if you're a diehard MMA fan that likes a top-heavy card with a lot of contenders, this is definitely a card for you. But this is one where I feel like the casual audience, if you will, may not be willing to shell out $75 to $80 to watch this card. So you kind of have to put everything in perspective, given that UFC 298, 299, and 300 were just all absolute class. This one could very easily be a downer, but sometimes there are those pay-per-views that won't get enough of recognition that end up being really good. So it's just interesting to kind of keep that in mind as well. So
for sure. So main event here, UFC Flyweight Championship. Alexander Pantoja defending the title against Steve Erceg. Steve Erceg really quick moving up the rankings. I think it's only like his third fight, and he's already going to be getting a title shot. Obviously, Zain, we talked about that before with UFC 300. Jamal Hill, Alex Pereira had been hoping with a quick finish of Jamal Hill that he'd be able to turn around and quickly become the main event of UFC 301. Ultimately, with his foot injury, that just was not possible. So, as much as the UFC hates to do flyweight main events, especially flyweight title main events on pay-per-view, Alexander Pantoja is going to get his shot to be a hometown headliner on pay-per-view in front of his native land.
Yeah, I mean, and another part that I forgot to mention that just totally came back to me is this was the hand that the UFC was dealt. They had no other options. Like you just said, Pereira was injured, and like you just said, he wasn't going to be able to make that quick 5 to 6 week turnaround and be 100% and healthy. So this is the fight that we're getting, and I feel feel like it's going to be from a Steve Ercik perspective, Brazil against the world for him because he's going into literal enemy territory. The last time you saw, someone in this circumstance where they only had a couple UFC fights under their belt and they got a title shot, the best person that I can think of is Brock Lesnar. I'm sure you can probably think of a couple other ones, but this
Alex
one,
Pereira himself.
yeah, I would say Alex Pereira himself, but that was kind of a different circumstance, and still because he did come from kickboxing. Steve Ercik is still very green in MMA, so I think it's a little bit of one of these things where if Steve Ercik somehow, some way pulls off this upset, he's in the conversation of or a GSP1 and Rousey home territory when it comes to massive ups. It's both from a betting standpoint and from a name value standpoint as well. So it definitely is an interesting fight. I'm just going to be blunt and say that I don't see this fight ending any other way than a Pantoja decision. I think he takes care of business in this one pretty easily. I think he wins this fight probably 4 rounds to 1 or 5-0. I just think he has overall more experience, a better track record, at a resume, has fought former champions and former top contenders. And I'm sorry, but Steve Ercik getting a title shot off of a guy who's 6-6 in the UFC and will probably end up being cut at some point, especially after his last performance. To me, was not at the right move in terms of who was available. We obviously know the Makayev fight did not materialize, so this is what the UFC had to do. But I just feel like this is too big of a mismatch for me to even consider picking Steve Ercik. But I think the first round won't be a feeling out process at all. Well, Steve Ercik will go out and try to win, but I just think that the grappling is going to be too much for Pantoja, and he's gonna get the win.
And you know what's funny, Zan? He's only ranked as of the time we're recording this. Ursac's only ranked number 10 in the flyweight rankings.
Yeah, it's
Makayev's
pretty
only
crazy.
ranked number 7. We just came off of UFC Vegas 91 where we had Mateus Nicolau taking on Alex Perez. Perez getting a win, and that was a 5-8 matchup.
But
So
I'm gonna
I,
count.
I, I understand. I understand why they're doing all of this because people are tired of the likes of Royval and Moreno
Right.
consistently, even though they're the 1 and 2 contenders, consistently being there at the top. I'll go back to something that uh, producer Pat said when he was doing a fill-in 1 week when we were talking about Royval versus Moreno. It's a real shame that Amir Albazi got hurt because I feel like that Brandon versus Brandon fight in February or this fight here, Amir Albazi could have been in there and he could have been a legitimate. I don't want to say Steve Ercik isn't a legitimate challenger, but I feel like it would be a more appealing matchup to see Pantoja take on somebody like an Albazi.
No, I agree. Um, for sure. And just to keep in mind, considering that we are starting with the main event, my main event record going into UFC 301 is 8-6, and yours is 6-8. So it's just something to keep in mind as you're making this pick, as you're trying to get back to 500, where I'm trying to stay above. So
Okay, well, I'm gonna keep it blunt then. It's gonna be a Pantoja win. It's gonna
you
have
think
to be.
so?
I don't see kind of like what you said. I don't see Ursig pulling off some massive upset. Pantoja just has too much experience. Steve Ursig's 3 wins. Now, he's got 2 performance bonuses already, so I don't want to knock him too much and that's within the span of a year. But David Dvorak, Alessandro Costa, and Matt Schnell does not scream title shot.
No, it does not. No way.
So I'm sorry, but there's just no way. Pantoja is going to be too experienced on the ground. He's got the better resume, like you said. He's just a better all-round, well-developed fighter. Steve Erceg's still developing. He's still early into his career.
And he's
I don't
only
see.
and he's only 12-1.
Yeah,
So
I don't see this happening. I see this as a clear Pantoja win. I'm gonna be in agreement with you. 4 rounds to 1 or 5 rounds to 0. Pantoja takes the cards, wins in his home nation, and retains the flyweight championship.
all right. Sounds good. Are you picking him by a decision just like me, or do you not have a
I
method?
said yeah. I said yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. Co-main event: the return of Jose Aldo as he's taking on Jonathan Martinez. So Zan, is this a desire for Aldo to return to the cage, Or is this a scenario where the UFC, like we talked about, their hand being dealt what it was, basically did the break glass in case of emergency glass to bring Aldo out, or a mix of both?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm gonna go thumbs middle and say that it was a mix of both here, but um I just think given who Martinez is beat, I just don't think this is the right matchup for him. And I actually think he's catching Aldo at a perfect time because Aldo, even though it was in a different combat sport, has stayed active. And I just feel like this is one of those scenarios where it's Aldo's homecoming fight. His legacy, his career is already set in stone. To me, I just think this is too big of a step up in competition for Martinez, despite winning 6 in a row. I'm gonna take all to finish Martinez here and get it done and get it done in his home country. What about you?
Interesting. So, just to know, Martinez is going in on a 6-fight win streak. His last 3 fights, 2 of them have been performance bonuses. Cub Swanson, Sender Magomedov, and Adrian Yanez, and he has been the master of the leg kick. Now, when I'm thinking about that, how his 2 finishes in that span, Zan, has come via the leg kick. I think about Jose Aldo. I think back to when he fought Alex Volkanovski at that 237 card. And Aldo was having some trouble with the leg kicks of Volkanovski. So I'm wondering if Martinez is going to apply that same strategy in this kind of matchup. I just don't know if Martinez is going to have the same strength, however, that a Volkanovski has.
No, I don't. No, I don't think so either. And you're comparing two totally different fighters there, which is another reason why I just think that Aldo's experience and what he's been able to do over the last several years and the quality of opponent that he's been able to beat. No disrespect to Martinez's resume. Martinez's resume is still good, but people forget that Jose Aldo was undefeated for a decade straight and then lost to Conor McGregor, and we never know what a potential McGregor rematch or how what could have potentially played out. So I still think that Aldo is still evolving, despite him being on the older side of 35 years old. He's currently sitting at 38 from what I remember, and I just think this is one of those situations where although Martinez is fighting a legend in the sport, Aldo's legacy is not at bantamweight. Aldo's legacy is at featherweight, but even with the differing weight classes, I just can't pick Martinez in this scenario. I just think that even and though, as I alluded to, even though Aldo's been in a different sport, I just think that overall his resume is better, and he's just simply the better fighter. So I'm still gonna pick him.
Normally, I'm the kind of guy who goes with the younger and the experienced fighter here. I mean, the younger and more, more to the future kind of fighter here with Jonathan Martinez. But I do have questions about how Martinez is going to handle somebody with the kind of world class experience who won time after time after time, like Jose Aldo. It's been a little while since we've seen Jose Aldo in the cage. But his losses are not exactly bad losses. So this could be an opportunity for Jonathan Martinez with a win here to be able to, really, really stamp his name as a contender at 135 pounds. However, I'm going to go with you, Zan, and I am also going to say Jose Aldo takes this one.
Do you think you're bold enough as me to pick Aldo to finish Martinez, or are you gonna go conservative and say that he wins a decision here?
Let's go with a third round finish.
Okay. Uh, you might have missed this part, but I'm actually taking Aldo to beat Martinez inside 4 minutes. I think he does it. I think he does it in less than a round. I think it's gonna be a shocker. A
That's
vin,
bold.
a vintage of a vintage a vintage Jose Aldo performance, if you will. Like
I understand the vintage performance, but that is bold.
yeah,
I just noticed at the there I think it's the exact same time. My eyes and eyebrows perked up and Pat's eyes and eyebrows also perked up at like the exact same moment. Like what?
yeah. Yeah. Hey, I'm it's some crazy predictions the last few weeks, and hence partially one of the reasons why I beat you guys by 2 fights in the month of April. So there you there you go. So
Hold on. I just had a oh there it is. That was me when I heard inside 4 minutes. All right.
You never know.
Hey, wait a minute. Didn't Anthony Smith fight last weekend?
Jeez, I mean, it feels like feels like for whatever reason, he's always doing something related
No,
to.
well, but I'm talking about Guskov. If
No,
you
I
did the
know.
side by side of Guskov and Anthony Smith, it's completely
It's
they're
true.
doppelgangers.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, they can easily be brothers. That's for sure. But do you okay? So looking at the line is a little bit skewed in favor of Petrino. But I just wanted to ask you first before we dive into that for a second. Do you think that people are not giving Anthony Smith the credit where credit is due, considering that he's been in the game almost 20 years and Petrino's maybe only been in MMA for about 4? Do you think the odds makers have this wrong, or do you think they have it right? Because I personally think it's wrong, and tons of other people in the community also think so. But what do you think?
First of all, I think whoever is in charge of making the lines for this pay-per-view card deserves to be fired, deserves to be slapped with a T-bone steak in the face. What are they doing with minus 500 here? Patera, I think it's Pateria who's got a big minus as well. And Kyle against Paul Craig. He's also got a big mind. I don't know what is going on here, why certain fighters are being favorited so much. Maybe it's the Brazilian factor. I don't know, but it's kind of ridiculous. And I feel like there's going to be a couple of good underdog picks for people to pick up on, pick plus money on, and get some nice paydays from this weekend. I'm certain Brett this coming weekend then is going to have quite
Yeah,
some things to say on Brett's bets.
like Petrino being a minus 465 favorite according to Tapology is just absolutely nuts. Like
It's
I don't understand that.
asinine. It's absolutely asinine. And to the people who are in charge of making those lines, I've got a feeling that some of them
on crack.
Well, I guess in retrospect, though, Anthony Smith has only won in 2 out of his last 5 fights, but that's beside the point. Look at who Anthony Smith has compared to Petrino. You can't compare them.
well, I was going to get to that. I think the thing is, there's got to be all these concerns, Zan, about Anthony Smith. There's got to be all these concerns about Anthony Smith. The loss to Ankalaev, the loss to Johnny Walker. Ryan Spann was a split decision. The loss to Khalil Roundtree.
Which, by the way, I scored the fight for Smith when he fought Ryan Spann, as did you. I remember that.
Yeah. But my point being, and then of course a few fight. He had the 3-fight win streak before this dip, and then had the losses to Sharon Rockich. I think it's just a matter of concern when it comes to Anthony Smith, and if the game has kind of passed him by. By the way, thank you to Pat for providing us in real time DraftKings odds. Bone Fim is minus 500. Lucindo's minus 440. Kaio's going to be minus 535. Petrino, this fight, minus 520. It's actually worse than Tapologies.
It's wild.
It's insane how this is becoming. But let us have a look at Vitor Petrino. Okay, first of all, you want to know a red flag?
What's that, Tom?
Vitor Petrino doesn't even have a Wikipedia page.
Yeah, that is a red flag.
So, Petrino, when you look at it, he has victories over the likes of Anton Turkalj, Marcin Pracino, Modestus Bukakis, and Tyson Pedro.
See, you can't even. That's what I just alluded to. You cannot compare his resume to Smith's. It's almost laughable. And Pedro just retired.
He did just retire, right?
It's literally.
But the Anthony Smith, but the performances of Smith,
downright nuts.
but the performances of Smith as of late do have me concerned.
Right?
Are you suggesting you're going Smith here though?
I mean, I'm actually taking him to win by decision. Yeah.
This is one that I gotta really think about. This is one I'm gonna be on the toss up until Saturday for. Right
Okay.
now I'm gonna go back and forth. I guess right now I might lean. I'm just way too concerned because given what you just said, Zan, if Anthony Smith loses this fight, it's got to be over for him.
Oh yeah, he's done. He's done for sure because that's what would that be? 4 losses in his last
5
6
fights, and
Yeah,
Vitor, like you just said, doesn't have a great track record. So
no.
this would be clear. This would be the point where Dana says the infamous R word at the press conference.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Uh, I don't. I might lean Petrino on this one just because of the young upside.
But do you think if it goes to the scorecards, he's going to be at a disadvantage though?
I think if it goes to the scorecard, I think the longer this fight goes, it might favor Smith more. But that's what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say Petrino gets the job done in 2 rounds.
Really? You're saying
Yeah.
TKO or sub, Tom? What do you think?
TKO.
TKO late second or early second round?
Late second.
Okay.
I think Smith's gonna make it a fight, but I'm just worried about.
Yeah, that was
I'm
my
worried about his durability.
Yeah, that was my next question. Is it going to be a good fight leading up to the knockout though?
I think it will be. I just have way too much concern about Anthony Smith's chin at this point and his
Okay.
durability.
Okay.
This one's interesting. Michel Pereira taking on Ihor Peteria.
Yeah, this one's interesting too because the line is super skewed. There's no if you're gonna give me one best bet to make this week, there's no way in the world this fight goes all 3. I don't see it.
No. Well, what's funny, Peteria did go the distance last time out in his win against Robert Berzak just a couple of months ago. But prior to that, almost all first round and second round finishes, whether he won or lost. And Michel Pereira is kind of a finisher in himself. So yeah, that I think is the best bet of this card is Pereira versus Peteria to not go the distance.
Yeah. This is gonna sound shocking, but I will take the ups at 0-2. I'm actually taking for her to finish Peteria here, and I think it's gonna be an action-packed fight. I think that we're just gonna have like a crazy highlight reel spinning kick or something like that. It's gonna be
Pereira's on a roll, to be honest. The Pereira's on a roll. He's won like 6 or 7 straight. Peteria, he got that win. But something to be concerned, Zan.
Tom Pereira's last loss was in the fall of 2020 to Diego Sanchez.
Yeah, I remember that weird fight.
It was a really weird fight.
So he's lost. Peteria has lost 3 of his last 5. Now, Zan, I did mention when he fought Robert Berzak, that was a win by decision. But you see the infamous scale emoji on Tapology.
I remember
Peteria
that.
missed weight for that fight.
I remember that.
So
people were going people were going insane after that. It was
I have some concerns here. I'm gonna go with the hot hand. I'm gonna go with Michel Pereira.
All right, so we're both in agreement there. Okay.
Yeah, I think this is one. What was the odd on this one? The odd on this one was Pereira minus 535.
Insane.
This might be a card that if you're not looking for underdogs, you might want to avoid betting.
Yeah, and my apologies to those who are confused. I'm and to say that I was taking Pereira as the favorite, not as the underdog. So apologies there. I have now
It's
since
okay,
corrected myself.
Sam, the lines make no sense here,
No,
our words don't need to either.
I know.
Opening the pay-per-view card, Paul Craig in action, taking on Caio Braio.
Yeah, I just think I think Berju is out for a war, and I think he puts Bahio in positions he's never been in before, and I actually think he subs him. What do you think?
You're going with a sub. Interesting. I mean, it's Berju, obviously. He's going to be a submission expert, but Bahio is on a winning streak, Zan, of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, 7 straight. with his last 3 wins being Mahmoud Muradov, Michel, I can never pronounce his last name, Oleksic,
Shinchak. Yeah.
and then Abus Magomedov, aka the guy that supposedly nobody will fight.
That's right. Which is hence a name of a Discord server in Lynch's VIP chat that's called Abus the Goat.
Abus the Goat. Well, if Abus is the GOAT, then that means you gotta go Kaio here, right?
Yeah, you would think. I'm still picking Greg though. So, but yeah, this is definitely one of those ones where you can flip a coin and you won't be disappointed.
Yeah, this is one where I'm probably gonna go with the same based on experience. So I'm gonna go with I'm also gonna take Craig by submission.
So are we in agreement with every fight except one?
Yeah, basically.
So what's the only one we don't agree on so far?
Smith Petrino.
It's because you have Petrino and David Smith. Just to give you guys a little bit of an update, because we were off last week. Producer Pat is still in the lead with 106 wins. Is right behind with 103 wins, and after my very impressive 10-3 and 8-5 weeks respectively, I am sitting at 93, 80 and 3. So still a very close race in terms of picks, as we've completed nearly 150 fights so far, and it's only going to get more exhausting as the year goes on. So there's your standings update. Any surprises?
Not really. All I could say is exhausting is the right word for it.
For sure. Are you proud to be part of the 100 win club officially with 103 wins?
Yes, but I desire more.
All right. Okay. And that motivates me to keep trying to turn you guys up, because I'm just praying that both you guys falter for 1 week, so it's really close. So,
I already had my falter week.
I know. Pat hasn't though. That's the thing.
That is true.
Not yet.
We have one more fight we actually have to preview, Zain. It's Cinco de Mayo weekend, which means Canelo Alvarez is in action, of course.
That's correct. So yeah, over on the other side of the world, back in the United States, T-Mobile Arena is the backdrop. You know the situation. You're undisputed super middleweight championship fight. Canelo Alvarez is taking on the young, highly touted, hungry, motivated, and nasty Jaime Munguia. I know that everybody wanted to see the David Benavidez fight that did not come to fruition. Tom, are you excited for this or not really?
I actually am, because I've followed Jaime Munguia since he came on the scene around 2016, 2017. And he just has continued to get better and better and better. And he just wins and wins and wins. But that has now led him to the GOAT. And this is definitely going to be his toughest matchup to date.
That's for sure.
I didn't think, Zain, that one day we might see Canelo versus Munguia, but I'm proud we're actually getting it.
I am too, and I don't know if the price tag for the pay-per-view is worth it this weekend. It's a little bit on the expensive side, unfortunately, but it is going to be a wild fight. Do you think the price tag is worth it or no?
Hold on.
Negative. You don't think so?
No.
For a one-fight
card. No.
For a one-fight card, which, by the way, is more expensive than the UFC. This is $89 and the UFC is $79. $69.
All I'm gonna say, Zain, is I think a certain website is gonna have a lot of traffic this weekend.
It's true. And potentially one of us might be using said website, but we can move on.
All right.
Are you picking Canelo to win by decision or by TKO? What do you think? Or
you're not even giving Munguia a shot here.
I don't think so. The only way
Munguia's 43-0.
I know that, but the only way he can do it, in my opinion, is between rounds 1 and 6. What do you think?
I mean, let's put some respect on Munguia's name here,
All
Zan.
right, all
Hold
right.
on 1 second. He's beaten Saddam Ali, Liam Swift, Takeshi Inoue, Gary O'Sullivan, Sergey Derevyanchenko, and
Jeremy
John Ryder.
Yep. Which, by the way, Ryder for starters is an absolute is an absolute stud and got floored in that fight.
So my
Floored.
point being, he's won his championships at junior middleweight and middleweight. I didn't know if it would ever get to the point where Canelo and Munguia would ever face off, like I said. That being said, we could talk about Canelo's recent performances and him seeming like he's slowing down. I think Munguia will give him a tough test. I think this one goes the distance. But I'm not going to go against arguably boxing's GOAT on Cinco de Mayo weekend. No way.
All right.
Give me
So
Canelo by decision.
So I'm going to give you a bold prediction to start, and then I'm going to actually give you my actual prediction for the fight. I think Munguia actually, and don't laugh at me for this.
What are you gonna say?
I actually think Munguia drops Canelo within the first 14 minutes.
What?
Yes.
What? Hold on. What?
Yes.
What? What?
Yes, I think that
Sam, you're gonna get this show attacked.
What do you mean?
You're going to get this show attacked. We are about to get shit on social media because of this.
Hey,
you just said blasphemy to some people.
Bold prediction is a bold prediction. I watched the Bivol fight. He didn't look that good.
And I agree. I will agree.
But in retrospect though, Canelo will survive that knockdown and rally to win a decision, probably 9-3 or something like that.
Okay, 9-3. I was gonna say controversial decision or no?
No. This is gonna be a clear like 117, 111 scorecard, assuming that Vegas doesn't screw it up. So, which
you just said you just said the big words, Zan.
I know.
Considering, pardon me, that if Vegas doesn't screw it up.
It's true. So we're both picking Canelo, which leads me to my very next question. Which card, in your opinion, and as boxing potentially will get in its own way once again, but leading to my next question, given that these are two massive pay-per-views and given that they have two hefty price tags on them, which card do you think is the better value? And do you think we're going to see a situation where potentially the Jonathan Martinez Jose Aldo co-main event overlaps with Canelo? And do you think that fans are going to be complaining, considering that we're going to have to flip back and forth between two different streaming services, and it's going to be a whole hoopla? What do you think?
Oh, wham. It's not like we haven't done anything like this before.
That's true.
Honestly, it's ridiculous that they're going to complain about that.
That's true. So I guess, so leading back to my question, though, which card do you think is the better value, UFC 301 or Canelo Munguia?
So here's my question, because here's my question. What does the undercard for Canelo Munguia look like?
1 second.
Because I feel like, if it's a one-card show, then I'm gonna pick the UFC. Anything else, and that's a debate.
Okay, let's see. I have it pulled up right here. This is what we're gonna do. We have a total of 11 bouts on the card. The undercard feature is let's see, Mario Barrios and Fabian Medina. Brandon Figueroa is on the card. We've got Mystery, who's obviously a stud. We've got Renati Cruz. We have a couple of interesting.
Okay, so Dan, I'm gonna be very honest. I think you had nailed it perfectly at the beginning. I think the hardcore MMA fans, for them, the better value is going to be UFC pay-per-view. But if I'm a casual, I might look at that card, that undercard that the boxing is putting on, and say, you know what, for $10 extra, a few more title fights, I might slide to that.
Tom, Tab, you don't just have a few extra title fights. You have 1, 2, 3, and 4. You have 4 title fights on the
Four
card.
title fights and a couple of very decent up-and-comers
Prospects.
in the sport. Yeah, and
Yeah.
prospects. So I, from a casual standpoint, if you want to call it that, I might lean to the Canelo card having better value.
Interesting. So I
It's
guess
very rare for me to say that, by the way.
So I guess the $1 million question, and you could choose to plead the fifth or not. Are you going to be watching both cards or just one?
I need to find a way to watch this Canelo card.
Okay.
I think I need to watch this. Obviously, I have to watch the UFC card because
Right.
we work in the MMA media sphere, so
Yeah, we have to. It's already
it's kind of in our job description. But I
Yeah,
need to make sure I have my eye on this Canelo card one way or another because it looks really good.
For sure. So just so you guys know, for planning and timing purposes, the Canelo card begins at 8 p.m. Eastern. The UFC card begins at 6 p.m. Eastern. The Canelo Munguia ring walks, according to several reputable sources, including one that we won't name. It's Tom's least favorite streaming service. The Canelo fight will begin roughly at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Tom, is that a worthy ring walk time, or is that too, or is that too late for you?
Say the ring walk time again.
11 Eastern.
Well, considering the fact UFC's main event ring walk time's probably not going to midnight or 12:30 Eastern, I'll be awake for that.
Yeah, for sure. And as the final question that I have before we get off this, it is more likely that Dana watches Canelo or the Dana watches Pantoja versus Zurtek because the Canelo.
Oh, come on, are you kidding me? He's gonna watch the Canelo fight.
Of course he will. Oh,
somebody is gonna find a way to, even if he's not there in Brazil, somebody's gonna find a way to get a screenshot of him watching the Canelo fight somehow.
Of course. Absolutely, which happens every single time Canelo and the UFC clash. Literally every single time. He's always watching Canelo. So yeah, that won't be a surprise. That's for sure.
All right, we got about 20 minutes left on the show, Sam. Let's get to some news here. Conor McGregor taking everybody by surprise. Not only is he returning to the combat sports world as a fighter, he's returning as a promoter. He is now the new part owner of Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships. The news officially confirmed on there. Yes, this is the name of the event, Knuckle Mania for broadcast.
By the way, I watched some of Knuckle Mania 4 in the card. I know I'm kind of.
Well, somebody pointed this out on social media. It always used to be BKFC that got crapped on. And then ever since Power Slap came around, BKFC is treated like it's treated very fairly.
For sure. So this was obviously a surprising announcement. Obviously McGregor is a massive star. It's obvious that David Feldman likes him. It seems like this is a match made in heaven, but I think even though this is cool and McGregor and sports entertainment get to say that they're a part of it, there are so many questions on this than answers that it's not even remotely funny. The promotional hit was cool. The whole thing was beautifully choreographed and genius. The whole thing, the Rolls Royce and the whole thing, but there are so many questions surrounding this that I don't even know where
Did you hear what David Feldman is hoping for, like, expansion into more markets now that McGregor's there?
I did. I heard because I had to write a story about it.
Okay, but you heard the post-fight press conference statement, right?
Yeah. That's where I got the quotes from. Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So for those who didn't know, here's what David Feldman had to say, because he was asked at the Knucklemania 4 post-fight press conference, do you think Dana White is a little mad, punching the air? And he said this, quote, "Listen, Dana White has a juggernaut with the UFC. Conor McGregor certainly moves the needle for him, but he's very, very successful without him. Not that he's fighting for us, but as him promoting our product, who knows? You're probably a little mad your number one star is going to be talking about a different company. So you're probably not very happy about it. But he's probably not worried about us. Not yet." Basically insinuating that BKFC is probably going to end up competing with the UFC at some point.
Hey, if that isn't if that isn't shots fired, I just roasted you, dropped the mic. I don't know what is.
I have no idea either. But what interests me, because then this is what you were talking about with some of the questions that we have here.
Okay.
The tweet that I saw before we started recording from Eric McGracken, that basically the UFC fighters all have in their contracts supposedly a clause that prevents them from working with or promoting another brand. So is this, to quote Eric here, is this basically the UFC and Dana White turning a blind eye because it's Conor McGregor, or does Conor not have such a clause in his contract?
Yeah, this is very interesting, and this is a question that I can't answer without factual proof. But I guess what I can say is pretty much throughout Conor McGregor's whole career, I would say 2016 onward, the man has literally been able to do anything that he wants. So I would not be surprised if it comes out either in the next few months or in the next few years, if this BKFC thing even goes anywhere post part ownership, that no, there actually was not a clause in his contract that said that he couldn't promote BKFC, and he goes out and promotes it. So no, that would not be a surprise to me at all. But what would be a surprise to me is if it became a public spat between he and Dana White over again, just like it had 4 to 5 years ago, considering that arguably the biggest comeback in MMA with him involved in it is less than 70 days away. So there's and there's a lot of stuff we don't know, but what I can say is at this point, I'm not surprised with anything that occurs with him anymore. So
fair enough. Do you think then, and I really hate going there, but
okay,
considering the surprise nature of everything,
okay,
do you think this is going to put Conor versus Chandler in jeopardy?
no way, absolutely not. What do you think?
I would hope not, because if it somehow does, if
Tickets
Dana,
are already on sale,
I
Tom.
know, but that's my point. If Dana goes into a big tiff over this, and it affects, you're gonna be affecting your own business, because what the hell else is gonna main event 303?
Damn good point.
Yeah, that
and
Dana is up shit's creek without a paddle.
And keep in mind too, there's still questions on what the heck the co-main event is going to be. We know it's going to be Colby Covington versus somebody, but we don't know who that somebody is, according to one of Colby Covington's latest interviews. He has no idea. He has no idea who he's even fighting yet.
Well, I know there's a couple of people, a couple of fighters who have been talking about wanting to smack the taste out of his mouth,
including Ian Gary.
Exactly. You know, maybe they will have that WWE style I quit match after all.
We never know. But if you were to get right now, if I were to put you on the spot right now, is UFC 303 going to move forward as planned, or are you going to go, or are you going to be on the shocking side and say no? What do you think?
I think it moves forward as planned.
Okay.
Let's talk about speaking of the UFC and pay-per-view, let's talk about their broadcasting for a little bit. So obviously
sure.
the sports
this is
world
something. You guys know this was a late addition to this episode's rundown, because I thought, given what Amazon is currently doing and given the position that the UFC is in, it's too interesting not to discuss it. And we'll discuss it more as 2025 draws closer, but this is definitely a very good precursor discussion, without a doubt.
Pat had been talking about prior to this that he watched the UFC Vegas 91 card on ESPN Plus, and he noted that he had to basically scroll down to like the 5th, 6th option just to find it. And honestly, it feels like, Zain, the UFC cards, when you watch them on ESPN Plus, they're like option 4 or 5 when they used to be option 1 or 2 all the time.
That's what I've noticed. And something interesting that I'd like to mention too is when I was or what was it? Oh yeah. When I was on the phone with ESPN customer support like a week and a half ago, I had a couple of questions for them. One was regarding the Fury Usyk fight on May 18th, and another one that I had was regarding UFC 303 and when the earliest time it was to purchase it. ESPN customer support has no idea what the pay-per-view schedule is, what the price points are. The person that I was speaking with on the phone, and I did not call in regards as a journalist. I called as a customer of ESPN Plus, very similar to last year when the prices increased, and I wanted to know more about it. But it's clear to me that ESPN customer support is in shambles because they have no idea what right information they need to give to people. And from that perspective, given what Patches said, ESPN is doing a poor job of serving its consumer, especially if you're a combat sports fan. It's brutal.
And
Tom,
what this
can you believe it that the person that I spoke to had no idea when is the earliest you could maybe think about purchasing UFC 303? I was surprised. I was surprised by that.
I mean, maybe you were just talking to a random customer service rep who may not be on the up and up with the product, but at the same time, I can't help but feel that these are all signs that maybe ESPN and I have never been one to really think about this because I was very confident going into this year the UFC and ESPN were going to re-up their deal. But
I
as
thought so too.
as
We both thought that.
but as
Absolutely.
2024 has gone on, it seems like UFC might be taking their product in a different direction. And obviously, you look at what the NBA is doing here, Zan. You look at what the NFL is doing with their uh, streaming exclusive games for some of the playoffs and some of the more important regular season games. What it tells me is
think about what Amazon Prime is doing for me. Is doing from a college football standpoint, where every game on CBS is simulcast over there too. Everything is going to Amazon / streaming Warner
everything's
Brothers.
going to the streaming side. Now, obviously, ESPN Plus is the streaming side, but it
Right.
feels like there's something bigger in the works. Now, obviously, ESPN has talked about basically potentially leaving cable altogether, and
I
the
could see that.
ESPN Plus is essentially ESPN itself.
Right, and there's that whole possibility of a joint streaming service where you only get sports channels for a certain flat fee a month too, including ESPN.
Correct. But at the same time, Zan, the UFC is in bed with another. Well, let's put them in quotes, combat sports, because some people don't call them combat sports.
It's true.
Promotion in the WWE, who is going to be moving to Netflix on a very major lucrative deal in 2025. Do you foresee the UFC joining their buddies at the WWE on a Netflix service at some point in 25 or 26?
The answer is no. I don't think so.
Where do you see UFC going if they're not going to be re-upped on ESPN?
If they're not going to be re-upped on ESPN, I think this is going to sound crazy, but I think and most people don't know this unless you're like really really clued into this stuff. I think that there are certain markets or territories where the UFC is accessible via DAZN. I think that if DAZN wants to make a big splash and be not just a boxing and NFL service, I could see a potential wild card being that the UFC goes to DAZN everywhere.
Tell me you didn't just say that.
Yes,
Tell
I
me
did.
you did not just say that.
Yes, I did. I did. Yes.
Oh, I'm sick.
I did. Think about it. They're exclusive on DAZN in Italy and Germany.
I understand, but honestly, at that point, I'd rather they just stay on ESPN.
No, I agree with
God.
you. I agree, but you who asked me assuming that they leave ESPN, because my actual answer is I actually think they end up staying with ESPN. That's what I think.
I'm gonna pray at this point that yes, somehow I'm actually praying they stay on ESPN.
They
But
better stay on ESPN.
But somebody pointed out before,
Okay.
somebody on the MMA Twitter sphere, as much as it could be a toxic place,
It can
do
be,
you
you're
think
right.
do you think Dana wants out of ESPN though, because ESPN is also in bed with PFL and Bellator?
I could see it also. Yep.
And basically put them in a situation during the negotiations. It's basically it's us or it's them.
I agree. And given how much given how much Dana says, oh, I don't have any other involvement in any of these other promotions. He knows more things about what's going on inside those companies than anyone. So there's no way he's not talking to people and saying exactly, and I mean literally exactly what you just said. Absolutely. Absolutely. Which, by the way, if you think about it, the UFC is promoted 90% more in the PFL or Bellator, and Bellator on Max, you can barely find it. And they've only had one
Well,
show.
actually, pardon me. I need to correct myself. Only the PFL is on ESPN Plus. Bellator members on Max. I forgot about that.
No, right, which is what I was just alluding to. Bellator's had one show in the Max era, if you will, and you could barely find it.
But yeah, basically, I could see it. I just don't know what happens then with PFL. But there's a lot of questions that I have regarding this, and I think some of those questions, Zan, go beyond MMA and go beyond ESPN. When you consider, like we said, what the NBA and NFL are doing, it's whatever this future of streaming holds for us.
Here's another outlier. We haven't mentioned this yet. The UFC still has UFC Fight Pass. There are countries where every UFC event is exclusively streamed on Fight Pass. Could you see a scenario where the UFC goes fully independent on Fight Pass, and that's where you see every UFC event?
Probably not, because I've got a feeling one of these providers, Zan, is going to pay the boatload just to have the UFC branding on it.
Okay. Do you think that Turner Sports and TNT and CBS could be a part of this potential conversation?
I think anybody could. I think anybody could at this point. I don't know about CBS. I don't know how much Paramount wants to get back into that game.
What about NBC?
I could see it. NBC hasn't had, they've been lacking in the sports content. They haven't been a part of the MMA sphere since the PFL's first season. I could see it.
Okay. But if you were to guess right now, do you think the UFC stays on ESPN or do you think they leave? What do you
Right
think?
now, I'm going to say they stay. Right now, I say they stay.
Okay. And I'm just going to say it, and this is just a prediction. I think that if they do stay, there's going to be another bogus price hike that no one is going to like. That's what I think. Because if they're gonna ask for the bag, if you will, to re-sign, it's not gonna be good. So,
all right,
which is what you alluded to 7 months ago. Oh, they keep racing all of us out and assuming that they stay with them, they're probably gonna keep doing it. So,
again, another certain website is going to have a lot of traction at that point.
That's true. Very well said.
All right. Very quickly, we still have more where we gotta get through. So quickly, UFC 304. It's confirmed July 27th in Manchester, but it will air in US prime time. So this is gonna be like UFC 204, where the main card's gonna start at 3 in the morning UK time.
Yeah, for anyone in Manchester considering going to the card, I feel bad for every single UK MMA fan that has to endure this. This is unfair. We get too many cards. Just you and I both being from the United States, you being from Staten Island, New York, me being from the suburbs of Chicago. We get plenty of cards with perfect start times for us. You might It is will show the UK a little bit of love. I think the UFC or whoever planned the scheduling dropped the ball here big time. So,
And Zan, I'll be very honest with you. I think it would be even better if it was UK prime time, because then the card would air here on the
during
East Coast
the day,
of the US at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. I'd love that.
right? Which is very similar to what they did for those several Abu Dhabi shows where they aired in the afternoon and they were done by 8 o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah, to be done with work at like 8 o'clock at night, that would be fantastic.
Oh, for sure. Do you think there's any sort of way the start time is going to shift, or do you think that Co-op Live Arena in the
Well,
UFC will keep it?
Tom Aspinall has been advocating for a move, so let's see how much power that he has there. Right now, he's not listed on the card. The rumor right now is Leon Edwards, Bilal Muhammad will be a part of the card. We were talking to producer Pat before, and well, it seems like my wish of the biggest European MMA fight will not be happening, because Cyril Gane supposedly is going to be in some movie over in Europe, and it's going to feature the son of Ice Cube. It's going to feature Rico Verhoeven and Cyril Gane. It's going to be, what kind of world are we living in 2024?
I don't know, but I hope the movie sells well over there, and I hope it's hilarious.
But it is disappointing we're not going to get that fight, which means at this point, and you can't get Pavlovich because we've already seen that fight. Right now, you're looking at Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blades in an interim title fight.
Yeah, which I'm not opposed to considering that boy he's just from my neck of the woods, if you will. But that fight is just a tuna of fight for Aspinall eventually becoming the undisputed heavyweight champion, because everybody knows he will after John Jones will officially retire. So,
So here's my question, Zan.
all right.
Given the circumstances of the interim title fight and them scrambling, it seems, for an opponent, and given that the UFC is not a fan of Curtis Blades, even though they don't seem to have a lot of love for Bilal Muhammad, is this a situation where the actual world title goes ahead of the interim title, and despite it being the heavyweight, Aspinall co-headlines and Leon headlines?
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And Leon, no disrespect, I think Aspinall is very well loved in the UK, but if I were to guess, and if you were to guess, I think that Leon Edwards is a bigger star in the UK. What do you think?
I think if only because he's the actual world champion.
That's what I was
Now,
gonna say.
when if Aspinall gets past his challenger on this card and becomes the heavyweight champion after Jones or Stipe retirement, or even better, if he beats Jones or Stipe for the heavyweight title, then Aspinall is going to be the bigger star.
Oh, for sure. For sure, absolutely. So, regardless, nevertheless, there is going to be a title fight at the top of the card. It'll just be at a very weird start time. Again, Co-op Arena, brand new arena, 23,500 people. If you have not bought your ticket yet and you are in the UK, consider it. But man, that start time of 11 p.m. for the first prelim is late, my friend. That is not fun.
Yeah. There's going to be plenty of drinking going on. Let's put it that way.
Damn right. The English fans are crazy.
Yeah, and it's gonna get even crazier. Very quick, I want to send our condolences over to Francis Ngannou, the passing of his 15-month-old child, and it's just that's something I never want somebody to ever have to go through, and this is
Yeah,
a
it's
real tragedy.
it's awful. For a lot of time, I mean, obviously Francis has been through a lot in his life. To have a kid at this stage of his career, to have someone that you love and cherish every single day, for them to no longer be on the planet is just a very difficult thing. So I can't imagine what he's going through. And the PFL statement was very heartfelt. Francis's social media post today was extremely heartfelt, and I just hope that he's with the people who he cares about, and I hope that he can. I hope that he can. He can mourn in the way that he wants to, and that the people are there who definitely care about him and who support him the best way he can. Because you never want to see that happen to anyone. It's a guy who's been through as much as he has. So our condolences and prayers out to him and his family for sure.
Okay, we have a few more topics that we have to hit on before we end things. Gervonta Davis, obviously Tank Davis, Floyd Mayweather, their relationship has gone very sour. Davis had claims that Floyd Mayweather owed Saudi Arabia a lot of money, and reports as of the last 24 to 48 hours are that Mayweather does indeed owe money, and he may be purportedly stuck in Saudi Arabia right now and not allowed to leave. Now, I know on the professional wrestling side of things, Dan, we saw something like this when WWE and the Saudis had that whole disagreement. I think it was in 2019. It was a few months before the pandemic had started, where WWE and UFC and Saudi Arabia were in a big tip over money, and basically a lot of the roster was grounded for quite some time until things were able to get worked out. Yeah, this is not good for Floyd. But it's also not the first time we've heard of him in money trouble.
No, this is not the first time we've heard of Floyd in money trouble, and I'll be very interested to see, given Floyd's stature and given his bravada persona, and quite frankly, his me attitude. I'm just going to say it like it is. I'm interested to see how this version of Floyd Mayweather is going to get out of this one, because based on what the Saudis have been able to do in the sports world and in the combat sports world as well, you don't mess with them. So this is going to be a very interesting and very much a developing story. So get your popcorn ready, because he might be there for a very long time. You never know.
Remember when Connor taunted him that one time during, he was throwing money around, and Connor said, "That's for the tax man."
Yeah.
I think we need to replay that clip, and we need somebody to overdub Conor's voice. That's for the Saudi prince.
Seriously. And the best part is in that same sequence, I'm pretty sure it was that same press conference. He goes, there's there's a backpack and there's about $5,000 in there.
That's probably what the Saudi prince is saying. They see Floyd's backpack and hey, there's $5,000 in here.
Seriously, one of the greatest press conference sound bites clips in sports. I just fighting, but sports. Period. That was hilarious, all timer, absolutely hilarious.
Joe Rogan had Max Holloway on a recent edition of his podcast, and Max Holloway was going off about Ilia Topuria. Obviously, ever since his victory over Justin Gaethje, there's all this talk about Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. And during that conversation, which Max Holloway was ranting about Topuria because they had the Bible verse off on Twitter, and then Ilia just has gone off about Holloway ever since. And basically, Joe Rogan is claiming that Ilia basically feels like he can call some shots now and turn down an offer to rematch Alex Volkanovski at UFC 305 in Perth. Now, I won't answer the question of if it's fair or foul for Joe Rogan to do something like this, but on one hand, Ilia Topuria, I appreciated the performance that he had when he won the title.
Right.
I know that they've been really banking on him, headlining a card in Spain. He just won the title. He's not in a position to be calling shots. Now, I am glad if it is true that this is happening. I am glad, not for Ilia Topuria's sake, but for Alex Volkanovski's. He was knocked out cold twice in a 4-month span. And we talked about that press conference where he's like he needs to be on go, go, go kind of attitude. And
Hey, you never know, though. You never know. Oh, the Topuria could have easily turned it down for that exact reason you just mentioned. You never know.
That's true. That's actually a fair point. And I'll be very honest, Dan. I don't want to see Alex Volkanovski for the rest of the year. I honestly don't.
Neither do I.
I know he's talked about the go, go, go kind of attitude, but all that's done for him is
lost him his belt.
Yeah. And it's run him down to the point where, we hear too often, Zan, about these athletes getting in bad situations because that their sport is all they know how to do, especially combat sports. His body needs a break. Look what Israel Adesanya's done. He took a year off, and now he's getting ready for the biggest fight of his life against Dricus du Plessis at UFC.
Which he might win, by the way.
So I think Alex Volkanovski needs to do something similar.
I agree. Do you think, because this is obviously a claim that he made, do you think that given the stature that Joe Rogan has, that something like this did it actually occur, or do you think he's just spewing stuff? What do you think?
He might just be hearing rumor and innuendo at this point.
Okay.
Well, let me ask.
I could believe something like this, though.
I could. You're right. Now let me ask you. Let me go to the question that I just passed on, Zan. Fair or foul for somebody like Joe Rogan to do this?
Given his stature and what he's meant and done for the sport, I would say that this is fair. But if this was anyone, like, let's say, for example, and no disrespect to either of them, they're both great at what they do. But let's say, somebody like a Dan Hellier or John Gooden did this, where they're not part of the pay-per-view A team, if you will, I would have a very different answer as opposed to maybe a Joe Rogan, a DC, a Cruz, or a Bisping, or even an Anik. So,
all right,
that's how I would compare to that.
Okay, one last thing here. Let's talk about a little briefly Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney. Ryan Garcia pulling off just unbelievable performance, claiming he should have claimed WBC title, and he ends up coming in and missing weight. And look, I get it. All the mind games, maybe he had a point about all the mind games and the way that he was acting and everything. Zan, he said at the post-fight press conference that he was drinking daily in the lead up to this fight.
Yeah, Ryan Garcia is definitely a strange bird, but outside of all the things he said, the fight was tremendous. I mean, he took it to Haney. He put Haney in positions he had never been in. He dropped him a couple times. Nearly won the fight in the first 4 minutes. Like he did things to Devin Haney that I thought very few people in Garcia was not one of them could do to Devin Haney, and he did all of that and so much more. This was a classic fight. I'm sure that Team Haney's pissed. I'm sure that they were upset that they didn't get at least a draw in this fight because that's how I scored it. It was a very close fight. To me, it was either a Garcia win or a Haney draw. So at least I just got it right there. One of the three scorecards I didn't fully agree with. That was 115, 109, but the other two I could justifiably have seen. But this was one of those fights where it's the start of boxing's new favorite rivalry, and there's no way that this rematch doesn't happen, because if the rematch does happen, it is going to be triple or even quadruple the level of hype that the first one was. And I think that if Haney fights him again, he's gonna be out for vengeance and then some. That's what I think.
Well, what bums me out is that means we're probably not gonna get Haney versus Tank.
I know.
But if you look at Ryan Garcia's post-fight press conference, they basically said the only way they do a fight with Tank or with Haney is if it's at a different weight, because Ryan Garcia admitted after the fight, he said, my body cannot make 135. So they got to do some form of catch weight.
All right, so I'm going to counter you there. What's more likely, Garcia versus Haney 2 at a different weight, or Tank Davis versus Garcia number 2? What do you think?
Well, that would also have to be at a different weight.
Right.
Garcia Tank, Garcia said he wouldn't, and actually Oscar De La Hoya also said it would not be at the 130 whatever that they fought at this time. It would have to be at a
147. Yeah. 147 was what they fought at.
I think maybe a Tank Davis rematch might be more likely. Now, what's interesting, Zain, Ryan Garcia followed that up during the press conference saying, you know what he really wants to do? He wants to move up to 154 and challenge Sebastian Fundora.
I'd love to see that fight. What about you?
I think that would be interesting, and I think that would be an opportunity for him to get another championship at another weight class.
I think so too, but you can't kind of Fundora with what he did to Sue less than a month ago. So you never know.
So a lot of possibilities coming from this one, but Ryan Garcia, I mean, you know, I eat my crow. He did it.
As do I. We both took Haney.
And honestly, that fight should have been stopped in the 7th. I don't know what the hell that referee was doing.
Agreed. But hey, by the way, that referee was Harvey Dock, and you could very well make the argument that he played a negative role in that entire fight. No question about it.
So even when everything goes shocking,
boxing still gets in its own way again, and it could have gotten in its own way even more if for whatever reason one of those three judges had scored it for Haney and not Garcia. That would have been pandemonium, my friend. That would have been nuts.
It would have been insane. All right. That's going to do it for us this week. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Up to the Bench Network. Make sure to follow us across social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at MMA Outsiders ETB. Make sure to follow the Empty the Bench Podcast Network, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at ETB Network. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. Help us continue to grow our subscriber count. Make sure to take the MMA Outsiders on the road with you wherever you get your podcasts. Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, so much more. If you are listening on those audio-only platforms, make sure to go to our YouTube home. Go to etbpodcast.com for more content from the ETB network, all the contributors who are blogging, so much more. Again, to my left, as always, Sam Bando, staff writer of bjpen.com, MMA Knockout, now starting at the Sporting News.
Thank you.
I'm Tom Albano, MMA News, stand side of MMA, then the PFL with their website. May is going to be a little bit of a quiet month. I think the MENA cards are going to be starting up. The first MENA card is going to happen, and then Bellator is going to be going to Paris in May. So that's on the agenda for the May schedule for the PFL.
That's correct. So stay tuned for all of the MENA coverage from Tom and all of the other news and notes in and around the crazy world of combat sports, which, as we always say on this show, has no off season. And before we get get out of here, we just wanted to remind you that the MMA Outsiders is presented by Playback. We said it earlier in the show. Be sure to go to playback.tv/ETB network to join our communities. We are slowly but surely approaching 30 members there. It's a really fun and interactive way to watch sports, including the NBA postseason, which is in the thick of the end of the first round of games and is moving into the second round into either this week, early next week, and so much more. So stay tuned for all of that. For myself and Bando was Tom Albano to my right. This has been episode 81 of the MMA Outsiders presented by Playback and courtesy of the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. And before we get out of here, and just got a recent fight announcement too, be Joe Piper.
Be Joe Piper. We'll see you next time.
See you guys soon.